Sup guys, it's your boy Justin, and for this week's episode of Tokusatsu Thursdays, we're reviewing the 15th Super Sentai show, Chojin Sentai Jetman, which aired from 1991 through 1992. It has 51 episodes. It was directed by Keita Amemiya, who did such shows as Crescent Moon, Mikazuki, Kamen Rider Black, Kamen Rider Black RX. He also did he's the main creator of Garo, right? And he also directed the Zera movies, which there's in one of the fights, giant monster, super robot fights in the show. You see a poster of Zerum, which Zerum was made in the same year as this TV show, which I couldn't believe he advertised his own movie in the show, right? Yeah, so like this show is like the last season of Super Sentai before the Super Sentai started getting adapted, if you can even call it adapted, in the West, right, by Saban, which I didn't notice. I found out the other day that it wasn't, most people probably think that Saban went to Toei and, bought the rights to adapt it in the West. It turns out it was the other way around, where Super Sentai was going broke. They couldn't afford to make more seasons, so they went to Hollywood to sell the rights so they can get funding to keep Super Sentai going. I had no idea that was the case. I found this out while watching That Anime Snob's Super Sentai / Kamen Rider retrospective, which if you haven't seen it, check it out. Right. So the show stars Kotaro Tanaka, Toshihide Wakamatsu, Tomohisa Naruse, Rika Kishida, and Sayuri Uchida. Also, Tachi Misaki as Count Raduget, who passed away 2 years ago, right? Which, such a shame that he's no longer with us, because he was probably one of my favorite characters in the show, right? And his character is now my new profile picture, right? So it's such a shame that he passed away. R.I.P. Misaki Tachi. So the show is obviously an action adventure fantasy show with horror elements, because of course it's by Keita Amemiya, and I gotta say, this was one of the most one of the most edgiest like Super Sentai / Power Ranger shows I've ever seen, right? Not only do you have body horror in the show, but you have real stakes in the show, because not only do you see people die in the show, but you even see little kids get killed in the show. Characters die, and I'm not gonna spoil who, but one of the let's call them Rangers, because that's the term we're used to. One of the Rangers dies in this show and doesn't get replaced, by the way, which apparently that's common in, like, Super Sentai shows, where they'll kill like a character, but they get replaced next episode. Happened in Bioman, if I remember correctly. Which Bioman, we were supposed to review the Bioman on the show, but I got bored watching Bioman because I didn't like the villains, and I didn't like the cast of characters. Here, the cast of characters are great, because they're not 20-somethings pretending to be teenagers. The characters are actually characters in their mid-20s, except for the Eiko, who is a high school girl, right? Which I think I would have to do the math, but she would have. I think she was in her late teens when I looked up everybody's ages. I think she would have been in her late teens in the when the show was being aired, right? So the show starts off with our main character Ryu Kendo, the Red Ranger, who goes by Red Hawk in the show because the show Jetman very much copies Gatchaman and the Science Ninja Team Gatchaman from Tatsunoko Productions. Even steals the fact that their jets combine into a bigger jet, and it has a special attack where it turns into a phoenix and one-shots monsters, right? Which their jet does turn into a robot, but that doesn't happen until episode 6, right? So it starts off with Ryu Tendo and his girlfriend Rie, who are part of Space Force. After taking down a rogue robot, they get recruited by the commander, who's Commander. I think I forget her. Odagiri, that was her name. I think it was Odagiri. She's a female commander, right? And she recruits them for the secret project Jetman, where they're gonna turn 5 people into superheroes and make them into this team to defend the Earth from outside invaders, right? Which they don't show any aliens, right? As far as we know, aliens don't exist. So on the Space Force headquarters, which is the Earth ship, right? They're having they're doing the experiment to turn Jetman, our heroes, into Jetman, right? By shooting them with birdonic waves, right? Ryu goes first. You never see the other candidates, by the way, besides from Rie, who's probably supposed to be White Swan, who is the Pink Ranger, by the way. She's technically the White Ranger, but there's pink as well, right? Because all the costumes are their main color and white. So because she's the White Ranger, it's white and pink, right? So while Ryu gets hit with the birdonic rays, Vyram attacks, which Vyram are these interdimensional invaders with creepy costumes designed by Keita Amemiya, probably, and they come from the reverse dimension, right? And the first thing they do is they announce themselves, tell them, "Hey, we're your gods, kneel before us, humanity," and they destroy the Earth ship, right? The Earth ship, which the members of Vyram are Count Radaget, who can turn into a monster and he wields a sword, right? Doesn't have a hilt or a holder for his sword, right? So he has a hilt for a sword. I meant a scabbard, right? A sheath. So he just carries around his sword, right? He's kind of like, there's no real leader, but he's like the de facto leader of Vyram, right? The other members of Vyram are Maria, right? Who we'll get back to Maria, right? Who you don't see her in the first episode, right? You have Gray, which is obviously inspired by the Terminator. He's a robot, but done in like Keita Amemiya's style. And he's kind of like a combination of Mobile Police Joban, which is another Tokusatsu show by Keita Amemiya, and Shadow Moon from Kamen Rider Black, right? And Gray was probably one of the cooler villains of the show. And you have Tran, who is like a chubby kid who likes to pull pranks, and he can use telekinesis, and he has a power glove that he can make people explode and stuff, right? So yeah, what happens after they destroy the Earth ship? Ryu, the female commander, and Rie try to escape the Earth ship, but what happens is that Rie gets sucked through a hole in the ship and gets blown out into space, right? And the female commander has to belly punch Ryu to knock him out, carries him by the way, Ryu is a very tall guy. By the way, carries him on one of the jets, and they escape. Right when the Earth ship got exploded, it's the Birdonic wave machine also shot 4 other people with bird rays, right? Which turned them into Jetman. So you have the grifter cool guy character, Guy Yuki, right? He's kind of a thug who rides motorcycles, likes to drink and smoke, right? You have Raita. Oh, by the way, Guy is the Black Condor, right? Of course, there's a Black Condor, right? You have Raita, who's a farmer, kind of the fat nerd of the group, kind of the comedic relief, who's Yellow Owl. You have Eiko, who's this like greedy high school girl, who's Blue Swallow, and you have the rich girl Kairi, who's part of this prestigious rich family called Kaoru, and she's White Swan. So the first like 2 episodes is Ryu and the female commander trying to recruit the other characters, the other people who were hit by the Birdonic waves to form Jetman, right? While Vyram is releasing monsters that are going around killing people, right? Which their monsters are, they have this thing called the Dimensional Bug, which comes from this, like, it's very Alien-esque, Alien Queen-esque, where, like, you have this thing that, that gives birth to the Dimensional Bugs, and the Dimensional Bugs fuse with inanimate objects, right? To form monsters that Vyram sets out to attack people, right? But yeah, so like they recruit them one by one. But Guy Yuki, because he's the grifter, kind of like, you know, bad boy character, he doesn't want to join the team right away. But eventually he does join the team, right? I really liked the first couple episodes, not only because it's directed by Keita Amemiya. You have that dark, gritty look to the show with his filmmaking, and you have the pretty cool shots. He likes to use some gore. Obviously, it's a kids show, so you can't use too much gore. But there's blood and stuff, right? And like you have actual people getting killed. And what I really like about the show is that it starts off with only Ryu and Guy being able to fight, right? And the other characters, because they're normal people, are like really scared. And even though they have superpowers, guns and swords and blasters, they're like you know, they don't have the confidence from training, right? So they get their ass kicked, which I really liked. Guy Yuki at first like fights like a dirty fighter. Like they fight the henchmen of Vyram, and he grabs one of the henchmen by the balls and like headbutts them in the fight. Man, it was like awesome. All right, I really love that. I really loved it. Yeah, so the show, I really like the show. It has really cool characters, really cool villains, right? And like, it's not like Power Rangers where like every episode there's like a life lesson. There are some life lessons in the show, but it's mostly about, you know, establishing like characters, like establishing villains, right? It's somewhat Monster of the Week, but there are arcs in the show where they set up and introduce new villains, not only for our main characters to fight, but also for the villains to fight as well, because they're taking over their top spot. Like at one point they introduce like the Vyram Queen, right? Who was like, you know, missing and fought dead, and she shows up and like takes over Vyram's operation while trying to grow the ultimate monster. So like, you know, Radicate comes up with a plan to betray her, and like you see he betray her, right, and teams up with Jetman to like take her out, and like his finishing move, he throws a sword right at her throat, man. Also, they one of the kid character Tran after getting made fun of after his plan to kill Jetman fails, because they all take the Vyram warriors take turns. The Vyram officers take turns to take down Jetman, because whoever they have a contest, whoever wins gets to become Vyram's leader, right? And he gets so butthurt at them making fun of him for losing, even though they all lost, right? He forces himself to grow and becomes Emperor Tranza, like super powerful, and takes over Vyram, right? Until like Radicate has to take him down. So the show, yeah, it has a lot of the problems that like Power Rangers and Super Sentai have, where it's a bit repetitive, but what keeps it from being repetitive is that, you know, you have actual character development in the show. There are actual arcs. There are some really cool episodes where they introduce new heroes and villains, right? And the new heroes and villains, right? And it's not just, even though you still have the thing where like all the characters, to get stronger, they need new weapons and new mechs, which there are new mechs do show up, new weapons show up, but at the end of the show, where there's like a series of like one-on-one battles, and like the last episode, the first half of the show is just a giant monster battle between Radicate and our heroes, right? Which I'm going to talk about the final episode, because the final episode is like, holy fuck. One thing that people might not like in this show is that there are love triangles in the show. Like, at first, there's a love triangle between Kaori, Guy, and Ryu, because Kaori has a crush on Ryu, but Guy has a crush on Kaori, right? And eventually, Kaori and Guy do date in the show, right? But Ryu has like a thing for Rie, who is very, I didn't mention this earlier in the review, but it's very obvious that Maria, the female officer of Vyram, is fucking Rie, right? It takes our heroes a long time to realize that was Rie, right? Which I really liked how they handled that arc, because, you know, it's not just, oh, they turn her back to normal, and then they turn her back to normal, and she just joins the good guys, right? They did it in a very like satisfying way, because it's like, when she was Maria, she had like because not only does Jetman have a love triangle, at Vyram they have a love triangle as well, right? With Gray, Radicate, and Maria, where Radicate wants Maria, Gray's in love with Maria, and Maria, which is Rie, by the way, and Maria has feelings for Gray, but because Gray's a robot, like there's an episode where Maria is sick and she has a cold, and Gray is trying to warm her, but because his body is metal, it's just making her worse, right? Which they kind of ruined Gray, man, because he was like this cool, like, Terminator robot, to the point where he even like drinks and smokes cigars, right? Even though he's a robot, which was fucking cool. Has a thing for classical music, but when he goes to fight, he's all business, right? But they kind of ruin him with having this relationship with Maria, right? So the show has great action, great character development, cool villains, cool heroes, which why I didn't like Bioman, because the heroes kind of sucked in that show, in my opinion, right? But I really liked this cast of characters, right? They were all great. Um, yeah. So, if I had some nitpicks in the show, there's an episode where they kill a dog. It was not a fan of that. Would have been nice if Keita Amemiya directed more episodes. Not to say that the people who didn't direct, the other episodes did a bad job. They didn't they did a decent job, right? But the best episodes were directed by Keita Amemiya, which I think he directed maybe like 6 or 8 episodes. I think he did at least 8 episodes, which were like, which was like the first two in the middle, 2 before like the final stretch of the show, and then he did the last 2, right? If I remember correctly. But yeah, like one problem I have with the show, they never shown like why Radicate saves Rie. They like the final episode, right? Which, okay, I'll say this: they kind of dropped the Rie and the Kaori and Guy relationship, right? Which would have been nice if they, kind of explained why that fell apart. Which we kind of can guess why it fell apart, because Guy goes to meet Kaori's parents, who are rich, and they ask him what's his job and everything, and he doesn't even bother to answer, right? He's just like, oh, they're like classist snobs. Guy, I would kind of like to know what your job is too, because we only ever see him like gamble, hustle, pool, and drink and smoke, right, and hang out with girls. So it's like, dude, you're in your early 20s, mid 20s. You must have a job, right? Some kind of job, right? But yeah, I don't want to spoil the ending right now, but if you want to know what my rating for this show is, it's 8 out of 10. So the final episode, I have to spoil the final episode. So the final episode, after they defeat Radicate, there's a 3-year time skip, right? And Raita is married with Satchan, his girlfriend, who was in like one episode. Eiko is like a pop singer, and Kaori is getting married, right? And you're kind of wondering, okay, who's she's getting married, because they're not showing the groom. The fact that they didn't show who the groom was made me think, oh, it's Ryu, right? Which they didn't show any evidence in the show that Ryu had a thing for Kaori. It was more like the opposite, where Kaori had a thing for him. And it's funny because like there's one of the episodes where like Ryu tells Kaori who Rie is, right? She says like, "Oh, I'm never gonna give up on you, Ryu." Gives up on him immediately and dates Guy, right? So there's a thing where like they get married, Kaori and Ryu get married, and Guy is late for the wedding. He stops by to buy flowers, where like some guy robs a lady, right? Steals a lady's purse. Guy chases the purse snatcher, and then gets stabbed gets stabbed by the purse snatcher, and goes to the wedding, right, where they're all partying at like some park or whatever. He's at a bench, right, relaxing, smoking a cigarette, hiding his gut wound, right, because he got stabbed, right. Takes one last picture with Ryu on the bench, and then Ryu goes to party, like take a group shot with everybody, and Guy dies on the bench, and like people are like, "Oh, Guy, why is Guy sitting on the bench?" He's like, "He's tired, guys. Leave, let him rest." So it's not entirely sure if Ryu knew that Guy was dying, right? But like, yeah, the show ends with Guy dying on the bench, right? Which I couldn't believe that, but greatest ending to a Power Rangers slash Super Sentai show of all time. So yeah, that's it for this review, guys. My next review is going to be Saban's Mask Rider. We can't always just review good stuff on this show all the time. Alright, guys.